Good evening. Tonight, we're starting with a world that sounds incredibly free and romantic, but in reality was brutally harsh, the world of Caribbean pirates. Picture them, outlaws on rickety ships, flying black flags. They used cutlasses and flintlocks to terrorize the high seas, giving all of Europe a massive headache. And even though Hollywood has made them incredibly charismatic, especially that one captain with the guyliner, Jack Sparrow, the truth is, being a pirate sucked. So, before you get comfortable and we set sail, do me a favor and hit that like button, and maybe subscribe if you genuinely enjoy me shattering illusions here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always cool to see what corners of the world our pirate ship has brought together. Alright, everyone, dim the lights. If you've got a fan, turn it on and pretend it's the Caribbean sea breeze. Let's relax and ease into tonight's journey together. First off, let's get one fundamental thing straight. Back in those days, nobody just decided to become a pirate. Forget what you see in the movies with guys answering the call of freedom and setting sail on their own. That's bullshit. Becoming a pirate wasn't a career choice. It was more like the last stop on the life has gone horribly wrong train. It wasn't an aspiration. It was an escape hatch from a life that was often a fate worse than death. The reason you're standing on this salty deck is probably one of a few things. Maybe you were a sailor in the Royal Navy. Forget the dashing uniforms and the glory. Picture this instead. You're crammed below deck with hundreds of other men, in a space so tight you can barely breathe. The air is thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and sickness. The discipline is brutal. A minor offense, like being slow to a command, could get you a flogging. That means being tied to the mast, while the bosun's mate lays into your back with the cat-o'-nine-tails. With each lash, it tears your skin to ribbons. Afterwards, they might even rub salt into the open wounds, under the guise of preventing infection. Many men didn't survive the resulting fever. Your food in the Navy? You'd be lucky to get something other than lobscouse, a disgusting, watery stew of salted meat and crumbled hardtack. The water itself was often green with algae, stored for months in foul-smelling casks. It was a life of constant hunger, abuse, and the ever-present threat of disease. One day, you just couldn't take it anymore, so you and a few mates staged a mutiny during a storm, raised the black flag, and went on the run. Or maybe you were working on a merchant ship, which was often just as bad, if not worse, because there were even fewer regulations. You signed on for a long voyage, dreaming of the pay you'd collect at the end. But your scumbag captain had other plans. He'd find any excuse to dock your pay. A torn sail? That's coming out of your wages. A barrel of cargo shifted in a storm? Your fault. If a sailor died during the voyage, a common occurrence, the captain would often list him as a deserter in the ship's log, legally allowing him to confiscate all the dead man's wages and belongings. You'd work your tail off for months, climbing high up the icy rigging in gale-force winds, your fingers numb, one slip away from a fatal fall into the churning sea. And after all that, you'd end up with barely enough money for a couple rounds of drinks at port. And that's not even mentioning the rotten food and the diseases that were always lurking just around the corner. Just when you thought your life was over, a pirate ship intercepts you. The pirate captain yells over, "Brother, stop slaving away for those bastards. Join us. We split the loot equally. There's rum to drink and meat to eat." Sounds tempting, right? But you need to understand, this isn't some declaration of liberation. It's a death pact. You're not choosing freedom. You're just trading the risk of being hanged at any moment for the chance to not starve to death for a little while longer. So forget all that romantic nonsense about Jack Sparrow living for the idea of freedom. You're not a pirate because you love the sea. You're a pirate because the society you came from, the world of empires, navies, and merchants, was a machine designed to grind you into dust. You're a pirate because the land has completely and utterly given up on you. Alright, so now you've gloriously become a pirate. What's next? Your ship and your crew, of course. In the movies, Jack Sparrow has the legendary Black Pearl, and his crew, while a motley bunch, is mostly loyal. Now, let's look at your reality. First, your ship. Forget the Black Pearl. A better name for this heap of junk under your feet would be the floating problem. It's likely a small merchant vessel you and your mates just captured, riddled with holes from the last fight. Your most important daily chore is just bailing out the seawater that's constantly seeping in through the seams. And you're better off not even imagining the smell in the hold. It's a bioweapon cocktail of sweat, vomit, cheap rum, and rotting food. Add to that the inescapable stench of the bilge, the stagnant black water that collects at the very bottom of the ship, a foul soup of seawater, urine, and all sorts of refuse. This smell permeates every plank of wood, every piece of cloth, every breath you take. The floorboards are crawling with bugs and rats bigger than your fist. They're the real old crew of this ship. This is no legendary warship. It's a giant, floating garbage can. And your crew, your so-called brothers, don't expect them to follow your orders with a hearty, "Aye, Captain." They're not your fans. They're a gang of desperate outlaws just like you. Most of them can't even sign their own name. They're hot-tempered, and they trust no one, especially you. When you're not fighting or working, you're fighting boredom. The main pastime is gambling. Men would gather in small groups, crouched over a barrel top, playing games like Hazard with crudely carved dice or a greasy, worn-out deck of cards. These games almost always ended in arguments over cheating, which, fueled by rum, could quickly escalate into a knife fight. A black eye or a new scar was a common way to end an evening's entertainment. The only thing holding this group together isn't some mythical brotherhood. It's a pirate code, scribbled on a piece of parchment, enforced with blood and violence. You don't lead these guys with charisma. You lead them with these brutal rules and by being tougher and meaner than everyone else. The moment you get seriously injured or make a bad call, the moment they think you're slipping, they'll overthrow you in a heartbeat and vote for a new, meaner guy to be captain. On this ship, trust is rarer than gold. Every night, you're sleeping with a weapon under your pillow, because you never know if the brother in the bunk next to you will silently draw his knife in the middle of the night for the few silver coins in your pocket. But you might say, at least pirates are democratic, right? The captain is elected and big decisions are made together. It sounds a lot fairer than being flogged by some Navy officer. Yes, you're right, but that's precisely what makes pirate life so terrifying. Because this so-called democracy isn't a guarantee of power. It's a game of Russian roulette with your life. As captain, you're no absolute monarch. You're more of a combat commander pushed to the front. The guy who distributes food, loot, and maintains discipline is your quartermaster. He's the one who truly represents the crew's interests. There's a constant, tense power balance between you two. Every order you give is scrutinized by dozens of eyes. Every decision you make is whispered about in the dark corners of the ship. Act too soft, they'll think you're useless. Act too tough, they'll think you're a new tyrant. You're walking on a tightrope, because if the captain is elected, it also means you can be voted out at any time. Picture this: 4 weeks you haven't captured a decent prize. The rum is running low, and the biscuits are getting moldy. Resentment is spreading like a plague. Then some ambitious guy, maybe your first mate or the gunner who was calling you brother yesterday, stands up and publicly questions your leadership. And just like that, an impromptu democratic vote begins. This is no civilized election. It's a public trial. The consequence of losing, best case scenario, you're demoted to a regular sailor, forced to endure the new captain's mockery. More often, you and a few of your loyal, unlucky followers are thrown onto a leaky boat with a bottle of water and a biscuit and left to fend for yourselves in the open sea. This is the most famous punishment in the pirate world: marooning. So now you get it. That so-called brotherhood is just a temporary alliance of convenience, built on the fragile foundation of getting rich together. The moment the cake is gone, or someone feels their slice is too small, the whole thing shatters. This constant state of suspicion and betrayal is more mentally draining than any sea battle. Alright, your crew is unreliable, and your ship is falling apart. But at least there's rum to drink and meat to eat, right? After all, Jack Sparrow's rum bottle seems to be magically bottomless. Sounds nice. But now, let's look at your daily meals. First, the rum. It's not for pleasure. It's a functional beverage. The drinking water on board gets slimy and full of green algae, and drinking it straight is a one-way ticket to diarrhea. Dumping a ton of rum in it was the easiest and most effective way to disinfect it. Secondly, your life is boring, painful, and filled with fear. You need alcohol to numb your nerves and temporarily forget you're floating in the middle of nowhere with an uncertain future. So you're not drinking fine-aged rum. You're drinking cheap, harsh distilled spirits that burn your throat. Its main purpose is to give you courage for the next day's fight and to help you forget that your gums are bleeding and rotting from a lack of vitamins. Now, let's talk about your food. Forget the roast pigs and fresh fruit. You only see those for a few days after a successful raid. On a long voyage, your main course is the hardtack, a brick-hard biscuit you have to soak in rum or stew just to avoid breaking your teeth. The worst part? These biscuits are usually home to some unwelcome guests, weevils and their larvae. Many old pirates didn't even bother picking them out, joking that it was just extra protein. Add to that some beef or pork so heavily salted it's practically mummified and gives off a strange smell. Under these dietary conditions, one disease became every pirate's nightmare: scurvy. It's caused by a severe lack of vitamin C from not eating fresh fruits and vegetables. At first, you feel weak and your gums swell and bleed. Then your teeth start to loosen and fall out, and your skin gets covered in bruises and sores. In the end, you die a slow, agonizing death. This is far more real and far more terrifying than any sea monster or curse from the movies. So when you see Jack Sparrow swinging his rum bottle, remember this: many of his real-life counterparts were probably dying in agony in a dark corner of the ship, all because they couldn't get their hands on a single orange. Alright, so now you're a scurvy-ridden sailor on a leaky ship, constantly watching your back. But you endure all this for what? Fortune and adventure, of course. The movies show pirates chasing treasure maps to chests overflowing with Aztec gold. They show fights full of heroic, stylish swordplay. Sounds exciting, right? Now let's get back to reality. First, the treasure. Forget the chests of gold. Your targets are ordinary merchant ships carrying sugar, cloth, or lumber. You have to sell this stuff to shady merchants at a pirate haven for a fraction of its worth. You end up with a few silver coins, just enough to get wasted at a tavern for a few days before you're a broke nobody again, forced back out to sea. The vast majority of pirates died as poor as the day they first stepped on board. Now, for the fights. They're not elegant duels. They're chaotic, bloody massacres. Long before the first shot is fired, the preparation begins. It's a frantic, organized chaos. You and the crew clear the decks of anything that could trip you up. Ropes, barrels, nets. Buckets of sand are thrown across the planks, not to clean them, but to soak up the blood that's about to be spilled and provide a better grip. Small wooden chests filled with pistols, cutlasses, and primitive hand grenades, often just glass bottles filled with gunpowder and a fuse, are placed at strategic points. You're not preparing for a duel. You're setting the stage for a slaughter. Your tactic is to swarm the enemy deck like a pack of wild dogs and just start hacking away with a heavy hatchet or a cutlass. The moment your grappling hooks catch the other ship, all hell breaks loose. The air instantly fills with the deafening roar of cannons and the crack of flintlock pistols. The smoke is so thick you can barely see, stinging your eyes and choking your lungs. Splinters the size of daggers fly everywhere as cannonballs tear through the wooden hull. Your first weapon is probably a single-shot pistol. You fire it once at point-blank range, then immediately toss it aside or use the heavy butt of it as a club. Then you draw your cutlass. There's no fancy footwork, no witty banter. It's just you screaming, hacking, and stabbing at anything that moves. You slip on the blood-soaked deck, hearing the screams of friends and foes blend together, as the only thing driving you is pure, primal adrenaline. It's brutal, messy, and over in minutes. And escaping with style like Jack Sparrow? Dream on. Run into a Royal Navy warship and you're done. Their ships are faster, their cannons are bigger. If you're captured, your one-way ticket is to the gallows. And they won't even give you a proper burial. Your corpse will be coated in tar, stuck in a cage, and hung at the harbor entrance as a very graphic warning to all the next Jack Sparrows. Alright, so you've survived the bloody fight, with a few hard-earned silver coins jangling in your pocket. Now, it's time to head to that legendary place, Nassau or maybe Tortuga, the great pirate republic. In the movies, this place is paradise. A party town with no king, no laws, and absolute freedom. Sounds like this has to be the best part of being a pirate, right? Now, let's see what really happens when you step onto this free soil. The first person you have to see is the black market merchant. He'll look over the sugar and cloth you risked your life for with a disdainful eye, then offer you an insultingly low price. You have no choice but to accept, because nobody else dares to buy your stolen goods. Then, with the money you just got, you burst into the nearest tavern, ready to get roaring drunk. The rum the bartender serves you is half water, but double the price. At the card table next to you sits a crew of professional cheats, whose only goal is to use every trick in the book to take every last penny from your pocket. And those girls giving you the eye? They're probably working with the local thieves. The moment you pass out drunk, they'll rob you blind and dump you in a filthy back alley. Lawless sounds cool, but what it really means is, nobody here will protect you. You get into a fight over a stray glance, and it could turn into a bloody knife fight to the death in seconds. No guards will break it up. If you get robbed while you're drunk, don't expect some pirate court to give you justice. And let's not forget the rampant diseases. These ports are disgustingly unsanitary, with sewage running in the streets. They're breeding grounds for yellow fever, malaria, and all sorts of venereal diseases. You might have survived scurvy at sea, only to catch a far deadlier illness on shore from a moment of indulgence. So, you'll quickly realize that this so-called paradise is actually a giant man-trap, run by greedy merchants, cheats, and thieves. Its entire economic system is designed to drain every last coin from you in the shortest amount of time, and then force you, a broke and desperate nobody, right back onto that leaky, rotten ship to risk your life at sea all over again. The pirate haven isn't your home. It's just another gear in the violent machine that ensures you'll never, ever get ahead. Alright, folks, let's go back to that first question. Do you still want to be Jack Sparrow? Let's recap your day in the life. You wake up on a stinking, leaky ship. Breakfast is a worm-eaten biscuit. Your brothers are plotting to overthrow you. Your body aches from the onset of scurvy. Your adventure for the day is a bloody, ugly brawl on a merchant ship's deck. Win, and you get a few coins to drink yourself into a stupor at a port designed to trap you. Lose, and your career ends at the end of a rope. So why wouldn't you last a day? Because you don't have Jack Sparrow's godlike luck. You don't have his magical compass. And most importantly, you don't have a powerful team of screenwriters ready to give you plot armor every time you're about to die. All you have is a fragile, mortal body that gets sick, gets injured, and feels fear. The real Golden Age of Piracy wasn't a romantic epic of freedom. It was a short, dark chapter in history written in poverty, violence, disease, and desperation. The legends we remember, like Blackbeard, are famous precisely because they were the one-in-a-million survivors. For ordinary people like you and me, our story would have likely ended on the very first day. Maybe from a sip of bad water. Maybe from a stray splinter to the head. Or maybe, just for glancing a second too long at the captain's gold ring, you'd be silently tossed into the cold ocean that very night. The sea tells no tales of the losers, and Jack Sparrow, he belongs to the movies, to our most beautiful fantasies of what freedom could be. But that real, cruel, and unforgiving Caribbean sea, that was never meant for us.